Hey, and welcome back to another episode of Planet Coaster, where we will be finishing up, at least for the most part and time being, around the haunted, kind of abandoned, rundown area of the Renaissance Fair. We will be moving on after this episode to the games area, so this will be the area of the jousting arena, and also the area where you'll find like the archery range, maybe the knife and axe throwing stalls, things like that, little booths, and maybe the blacksmith will be in that area as well. So we're going to be starting off this episode building off a few little stalls. We needed some more stall variation, and we're going to be using these as like filler placements to kind of nestle around in these open grassy areas that we have left over between, say, the cemetery and the other half of the park, and also around, say, the tavern and areas like that. So these small little booths are basically like small little buildings that you might find elsewhere in the park, just miniaturized. We're going to have a simple tower here and a barn-style roof just to give a nice covering. And this is the largest little variant that we make this episode. And it's gone through a couple iterations just to try and come up with a cool decoration for the visitors to have. And decided with the shield and kind of coat of arms effect, we'll be able to kind of call this a finished booth. We're not going to decorate the interior just yet. I think that's going to be something I'm going to do off camera, but we have enough to put shelving in there and things like that. We're going to make a few more little variants here, and the other variants will just be one tile wide little structures. In fact, I need to actually get used to building probably full scale structures 1 to 2 tiles wide. It saves a lot of time. And really, you're not seeing the backside of these structures usually. And so doing this in a facade manner, I think when we do a new park, something that's not the Renaissance Fair theme, because if I change it up now, it might look a little weird compared to everything else. But I think going forward after this one, we'll be using more simple sized and more realistic in terms of time saving size structures. Like, we don't have to do the sides and the backs or anything like that. We'll just do the front facades and leave it like that. Very similar to how you might see in a traditional theme park. Renaissance fairs are a little special in which a lot of them do have the full structure built, and the full structure is enterable and you walk around it and the whole thing is a shop. They don't have these modern kind of backstage areas that you might see in a standard kind of theme park, because they are just different kind of structures. And then also, you're not going to find the modern amenities that you might find in, say, Disney World at a Renaissance Fair park. It's just not gonna happen with their budget and things like that. Having even this roller coaster off in the distance from a last episode is definitely still not even something that you're gonna see. Unless, when I visit Texas this month, because I'm going to the Texas Renaissance Fair Festival here around the 20th, I'll report back to you if there's a roller coaster there. I'm fairly certain there's not, but you never know until you go and verify for yourself. You can read all the articles online, and they could be lying. Who knows? So, moving on to kind of the third structure, I felt like maybe having a wide base and a tower might have been cool, but overall decided that another larger element would have been in bad taste. So we're going to go back down to a single tile here and just give it a simple thatched roof, as I don't feel like we use thatch quite enough compared to every other roof type in the game right now. And thatch will also give it just a nice home-like feel, and will suffice just for something that small. We'll even put some swords and a small shield there just for decoration. And of course, we need some type of flag on it, some type of medieval kind of flair touch added on. This one will even have like a little fake chimney, just to really sell the miniature version of a normal building here. And there will be a few little skips this episode. as a lot of this detailing is very repetitive, and me cutting them out just so I don't have to sit there and explain that we're placing down timber frames for another structure over and over and over is a little redundant. So that's why we will skip around a little bit. These little shops here are going to be lining kind of this dirt path onto the main road, and then also this little corner by the graveyard here. And after that, we'll just move on to kind of the main element and the main chunk of what this episode is. I wanted to work on the transition between the normal kind of standard layout in the pristine buildings to this ruin section, and I couldn't think of a better way than to say build an actual guard tower kind of checkpoint area. And what we'll do is we'll end up eventually, after we come up with a base design here, is cut out a few walls and make it look partially crumbled in certain areas, just to really sell the transition between the two zones, and then also build a partially destroyed wall running along kind of towards the castle. And it's a low-lying wall. As you can see here, we're just going to use a simple grid of space wide here with a single kind of keeping it low, but it is a peaked roof. And over there it's pristine and fine. In fact, that left a little courtyard back there that we will eventually fill with a modern kind of just backstage building. Those would be rare in Renaissance fairs, but I'm sure you need a place with some air conditioning, something for your staff to just kind of relax, get away, break character for a bit, and enjoy some modern world luxury amongst all this old kind of style stressors, you could say. So yeah, just a simple red path here, just slightly modern, kind of just a little courtyard, and that's just so from a distance the park still feels cohesive and all the space is being utilized. Here are some roots, some vines, ivy, and the bushes here transitioning from that lush green with some of those red flowers down to that dead branchy look, which I think is going to be a nice transitional piece in between the two zones. Here, trying to get the wall to slightly start curving along with the path itself. A little hard to do, but you can think of different ways to do this by, say, coming up with a simple stitch pattern, some type of handcrafted little gap filler to really make the space work and slowly transition so you don't get a whole lot of ugly roof tiles kind of colliding together. Here is a whole bunch of rubble being laid, and using a combination of the two different stone overhang piece, we will be able to build up the base of our rubble. And there's a lot of little layers that go into things like this. You do the base stonework, and then you might be able to even save that as a blueprint, so you can shift large kind of shapes around and then fill in areas with some larger kind of natural stone elements that might be left over, or maybe the wall went through these stone elements originally, and then since it collapsed, they've kind of re-exposed these areas. And then you can also use them as kind of darker spots along the rubble here. And then you go over it all again with some greenery, some overgrowth to show its age. And we're even able to go back in with some of these small dormer windows that have the kind of the same roof color here to show that maybe some shingles are left over as well. Though they would be heavier if they're ceramic or something, rather dense, so they might sink into the ground, and so that's why there's few of it actually visible from afar here. At this point, we'll just use a break of using shrubbery, really showing the contrast between the healthy side and more of the cursed land, and even throw in some wooden kind of patchiness onto the wall itself and into the rubble. And you're going to see this kind of rinse and repeated even into the tower themselves as we move into different areas. Of course, we'll be adding a whole bunch of trees and other elements into and along the walls, really kind of framing the buildings themselves, and that'll be kind of its own natural wall for this area of the park. So you can see here more just rubble and random board placement. I'm not really thinking too hard on it. I want it to look relatively believable, but also a little campy. I mean, why not? I mean, it's a park. It's supposed to be a little fun, not 100% accurate and serious. So we can overdo it a little bit in areas and also underdo it if we feel like that's something that at least fits everything else that's going on. So the ivy is basically coming up this side of the tower and going into the middle of it and kind of crushing it, and in doing so, the ivy is also supporting the tower, and you're running vines up, and you can even inlay them upwards to where they kind of hook under the battlements and support it over time. It's very interesting. You're kind of thinking of these small little stories of what might have happened to this wall, why it might have crumbled in this exact spot. Maybe a loose trebuchet shot hit up the upper tower and broke apart the roof here, exposing some of the boards, and the ivy on the other side of the tower is coming through and up through the layers, and then kind of some greenery is exposed, and at that point, you just kind of build a narrative, and that builds off itself and feeds off itself, and allows you to construct these little stories that can really sell the space and also give your park some history behind it. Something that maybe the entertainers could talk about to the guests while they go around and get a gathering of crowds. This is very common in like Disney World, where say Gaston's there and interacting with the crowd in character around the town. Not Sleeping Beauty. I'm getting Belle. I'm getting my movies mixed up. It is late. I'm tired. It's month end in accounting, guys. Work is not a fun time right now. So here is the other tower, much of the same. The green going in, instead of supporting the actual battlement elements, this is actually just coming up through the upper story there. We're even able to copy and paste some of the destroyed wall, giving us kind of a debris field behind the pristine elements there. And then we just use the rest of the time kind of filling in these dead spaces, laying out some of the remaining little fences so that we can bump up shrubbery and dead debris along those, so we can really fill in the space here. I wanted the space around this flat ride to be relatively plain in terms of there's no structures or anything like that. It's just an open field, so that when they're on that thing, they get a full nice 360 view of the stage to the right and also the roller coaster station on the left side of the ride. And at this point, this is the final little section here for today's episode. Just a simple kind of, I guess, addition onto the tavern. This is kind of the standard seating, and we're going to be using stone little chairs here that we're going to try to cobble together using windows. And then, of course, there's a bunch of sirens going on because I live in the freaking city, which is the absolute worst, and I'm sorry if that does come through. Maybe there's a fire somewhere, who knows. But saving this as a blueprint, copying it around, makes it relatively quick, and the sirens are still going. My goodness, that's impressive. Some arches just for some vertical elements, and then at that point we might as well just take one final look of this area in real time with the low FPS and call this episode done. Alright, so welcome to the kind of real-time look of the overall abandoned kind of horror section of the Renaissance Fair Park. These definitely aren't really a commonplace in Renaissance fairs or anything like that, but it's definitely a nice break in the standard mold that we've been following to the left, and it gives a nice little bit of contrast to everything else in general. So we're just gonna go ahead and hit play here, just so we can get maybe some light background noise of the crowds and things, and take a look at everything up close, so you can see kind of how these roots and tree branches are kind of merging into the building itself, and then sprouting, and ivy going up the buildings at this point, and also just the exposed timber frames of the wall. You can get some different colors in here as well, using this kind of, what's this, an ironwood bush of some kind. I really like using that. Just spots here and there. It's a nice kind of light pink color. Of course, the destroyed wall that we have going along the castle, and it's definitely a nice filler for breaking up the two areas. And so when we move on to the new section, that's kind of something to keep in mind, is that I like to kind of establish the look of an area first, and then coming back over to like the edges and cleaning those up. And that's going to be common as we go over here to the right more, because the stables, jousting arena, and everything like that is going to be down here. And I'm going to leave this blank while we work on that, and then come back to this, because I feel like that's the best way to smooth out the general feel of it. And we can also add some more decorative pieces later on, like we did over by the theater. How we did the overhang here. We might do like a spooky version on the other side, but this was, you know, an afterthought. There's plenty of reasons to go back into your other areas of your park and touch up elements as you go through. I don't really consider anything 100% done ever. There's always room for improvement, always room for more detail, and always room for you guys to like play around and add and mess around with the overall kind of look of stuff. So if we kind of fly down here, you can see our nice tables. There's even a little market stall here as well. The backs of the windows here look really nice, just almost like iron work on the backs of the chairs themselves, and they're roughly to scale of the peeps and everything. So that is a nice thing to keep in mind when you're building furniture elements or little detailing elements, is trying to keep it into scale with the people using it. You know, these people are really small compared to 98% of the scenery elements in this game. So that's something to, like, in Minecraft, when I'm building a building, or any other building game, even Medieval Engineers, you know, a wall tile is much smaller than what we have here. And it causes me to build things a little too large at sometimes, but also just for the small details, I think I would recommend looking at the size of the people in the world itself. Here's a look at some of the new lighter stall areas, kind of just tucked away as a detail. I like how there's just this center tower here and a door that could store some things that they might want on the back storage and on this little stall. It's a little bit larger and can fill in the space a little bit better. Added a small campground, because obviously a lot of the vendors and actors and things actually live kind of around, maybe in a hotel, but some of them actually might set up camp in the park itself, just for convenience sake. There's some wagons back here, some more stalls. There's no one really coming back into this area unless they want to sit on a bench or something. But, you know, I just like to have little elements that make sense throughout the whole build. And, you know, overall, I think the theme works, and it turned out really well. And I hope you guys enjoyed this section of the park. But now we're going to be moving on. Next episode, we'll be moving on to the games area. So if you guys have any game stalls you want to see from archery ranges, throwing axe stalls, you know, anything that you can maybe think of that could be similar to like a fairground, Renaissance fair element, go ahead and let me know in the comments down below. So if you guys enjoy this episode and you're new, feel free to subscribe. I try to release creative stuff all the time on this channel. Go ahead and leave a comment down below on what you guys think so far, what to add, change, etc. Check out the other videos so you can see how all of this was built, and I'll see you all in the next episode.